They say the day before your wedding is supposed to be a blur of excitement, last-minute fittings, and happy tears. For me, it was a crisp Friday afternoon, and I was exactly where I wanted to be. My car was packed with white lace, expensive champagne, and gifts for my bridesmaids. I had just parked in front of my apartment building, feeling that rare, fluttery sense of absolute certainty. Vladimir was the one. In the 2 years we had shared, he hadn't just been my partner. He had been my fortress. I remember the weight of the grocery bags cutting into my palms as I struggled toward the entrance. I was thinking about the seating chart, wondering if my aunt and my mother-in-law-to-be would finally find common ground over dessert. That's when the world shifted. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw him. A man who didn't belong in this quiet, manicured neighborhood. He was disheveled, wearing a coat that had seen too many winters, and he smelled of stale tobacco and old rain. I tightened my grip on my bags, my city instinct kicking in. I tried to walk faster, but his voice stopped me. It was a raspy, sandpaper growl. "Miss, wait, I have something for you." I froze. "I don't have any change, sorry," I said, not looking back. "It's not money," he said, stepping closer. "It's a letter." A warning. He held out a piece of paper, folded into a tight, dirty square. My heart began to drum against my ribs, a slow, rhythmic warning. Every logical part of my brain told me to drop my bags and run inside. But there was something in the way he looked at me, not with aggression, but with a strange, twisted kind of pity. I reached out. My fingers brushed his cold, grime-stained hand as I took the note. "My job is done," he muttered, and before I could blink, he was retreating. He didn't just walk away. He scrambled, his silhouette disappearing around the corner with a frantic energy that left me standing in the middle of the sidewalk, paralyzed. I dropped my bags. The sound of a glass jar of gourmet olives shattering inside one of them echoed through the empty street, but I didn't care. I unfolded the paper. There was no signature, no long explanation, just a single URL, scrawled in bright, aggressive green felt tip marker. I stood there for what felt like hours, the wind chilling the back of my neck. It's a prank, I told myself. A cruel, random joke. But as I looked up at the windows of my beautiful apartment, the home I shared with the man I loved, I felt like a stranger looking at a movie set. The lace in my car suddenly felt like a shroud. I left the groceries on the pavement and ran upstairs. My apartment was quiet, filled with the scent of the lila Vladimir had sent me that morning. I sat at my laptop, my fingers hovering over the keys. I didn't want to type those characters. I knew that once I pressed enter, the girl I was, the happy bride, might cease to exist. I typed it. The link redirected to a Facebook profile. The name was Alina, and the profile picture. It was a vibrant, beautiful redhead with a smile that looked like it could burn down a forest. I scrolled down, my breath catching in my throat. There he was, Vladimir. My Vladimir in the first photo. They were at a cozy outdoor cafe. He was leaning in, his hand resting on the small of her back in a way that was so familiar it made me want to scream. He was wearing the blue linen shirt I had bought him for our anniversary. The caption read, "Coffee dates with my favorite person. Everything is better with you." I scrolled further. The photos became more intimate. They were in the mountains, the snowy peaks of Bukovel. They were wrapped in a single blanket, holding mugs of cocoa, their foreheads touching. The date on the post. It was 2 months ago. The exact week Vladimir told me he was in Kyiv, grinding through 16-hour days to close the biggest contract of his career. He had even called me every night, sounding exhausted, telling me how much he missed the smell of my hair dye as I stared at the screen. The lila on my table seemed to lose their color. The man I was marrying tomorrow wasn't the man I had lived with for 2 years. He was a ghost, a lie, a master of a double life. I wasn't a bride. I was a victim of a grand, elaborate fraud. I closed the laptop, the silence of the room suddenly deafening. I looked at my engagement ring. The diamond caught the light, sparkling markingly. My mind began to race through the logistics of cancellation. The caterers, the guests flying in from London, the look on my father's face. But then, as I reopened the laptop for one last look at my executioner, my eyes locked onto a detail. A tiny, insignificant flaw in the perfect tragedy. I zoomed in on Vladimir's face in the mountain photo. My breath hitched, but this time, it wasn't from grief. It was from a sudden, sharp spark of doubt. The silence in the room felt heavy, like it was pressing against my eardrums. I stared at the screen until the pixels seemed to burn into my retinas. My hand, still trembling, moved the cursor to zoom in on Vladimir's face in that mountain photo. I needed to see his betrayal in high definition. I needed to feel the pain clearly so I wouldn't hesitate when I finally called him to end it all. But as the image enlarged, something stopped the breath in my lungs. It wasn't a spark of love, but a spark of cold. Analytical observation. 10 days ago, Vladimir had come home from the gym with a dark, purplish bruise under his left eye, a clumsy encounter with a stray barbell. He had been so embarrassed about it, joking that he'd look like a retired boxer in our wedding photos. Even this morning, despite my best attempts to hide it with high-coverage concealer, the faint, yellowish shadow of that bruise was still visible. I looked at the Bukoval photo. According to the timestamp, this was posted only 3 days ago, allegedly during his business trip. The lighting in the photo was bright, reflecting off the white snow. His face was turned directly toward the camera. His skin was flawless. Not a mark, not a shadow. I felt a strange, electric jolt go through my spine. A normal person would think, maybe it's an old photo. But the blue shirt he was wearing, the one with the unique wooden buttons, I had only given it to him 3 weeks ago. It was a custom piece from a local designer. Something is wrong, I whispered to the empty room. The grief that had been suffocating me just moments ago was suddenly replaced by a sharp, icy clarity. I wasn't just a heartbroken woman anymore. I was a woman looking for a glitch in the matrix. I knew I couldn't trust my own eyes. I was too close, too emotional. I needed a surgeon of the digital world. I picked up my phone and dialed Alexander. Alex had been my classmate since the 3rd grade. He was the kind of guy who spent his weekends deconstructing malware and hacking into his own smart fridge just for fun. He was also supposed to be at the wedding tomorrow with his girlfriend, Natalia. Alex, it's Tanya, I said the moment he picked up. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else, someone much colder. I'm going to send you a link and some files. I need you to tell me if they're real. And Alex, I need you to do it now. My life depends on it, Tanya. You sound like you're in a spy movie. Is everything okay? It's the day before just check your email. Alex, please. I spent the next hour pacing the length of my living room. I looked at the wedding favors, small jars of honey with our names embossed in gold. Tanya and Vladimir, forever. I felt an urge to smash them against the wall. Then I'd look at the photo of the bruise and tell myself to wait. The pendulum of my mind swung violently between he's a monster and someone is trying to kill me. Finally, my laptop chimed. A video call from Alex. When his face appeared on the screen, he wasn't smiling. He looked puzzled, his glasses reflecting the blue light of his multiple monitors. Tanya, where did you get this? He asked, skipping the pleasantries. A stranger handed it to me. Why? What did you find? Okay, listen to me. Alex leaned in. The girl in the photos, Elena, she's real. Her profile is real. But the photos of her with Vladimir, they are masterpieces of deception. I ran a deep-level metadata analysis and a light source consistency check. Look at the shadows on Vladimir's collar compared to the shadows on the girl's face. The light is hitting them from 2 slightly different angles. It's subtle and visible to the naked eye. I sank into my chair, my legs turning to jelly. So, he wasn't there. Not a chance, Alex said, his voice gaining confidence. But I didn't stop there. I have a cousin who works security at the Prime Business Center in Kyiv, the place where Vladimir said he was having his meetings. I asked him to pull the lobby logs. Tanya, Vladimir entered that building at 9 a.m. every day this week and didn't leave until after 7 p.m. I have the grainy CCTV stills to prove it. He was exactly where he said he was. A sob escaped my throat, not of sorrow, but of pure, overwhelming relief. But it was quickly followed by a cold shiver of fear. Then who did this? Alex. Who hates me enough to spend days creating a fake life for my husband? That's the question, isn't it? Alex's eyes narrowed. Whoever did this didn't just want to hurt you. They wanted you to cancel the wedding. They wanted a public, messy breakup. And they almost got it. But they made two mistakes. They didn't account for the bruise, and they used a professional designer's touch. What do you mean? The way these photos were edited. The blending, the color grading. It's the work of someone who knows printing and digital layout. And I think I found a lead. I traced the IP address used to create that fake Alina profile. It's registered to a local printing house downtown as City Print Solutions. Does that name mean anything to you? I shook my head, but then a memory flickered. A name I'd seen on an old high school reunion list. No. But wait, Alina Petrova. She was in Vladimir's class. She used to live in the apartment next to his parents. Well, Alex said, grabbing his car keys. I think it's time we paid a visit to City Print Solutions. I'm coming to pick you up. Don't call Vladimir yet. If we're going to catch a ghost, we need to be quiet. I stood up, wiping the tears from my face. The white dress was still hanging on the door, pristine and silent. I looked at it one last time. Tomorrow, I would wear it. But today, I had a war to win. The drive to City Print Solutions was the longest 20 minutes of my life. Alex drove in silence, his door set, while I watched the city lights blur through the window. I felt like I was suspended between two versions of reality. In one, I was a happy bride-to-be. In the other, I was a detective chasing a shadow that had tried to swallow my future. We're here, Alex said, pulling the car to a sharp halt in front of a grey, industrial building. The sign flickered with a cold, blue neon light. It was late, but through the glass windows, I could see the rhythmic glow of high-end printers and the silhouette of someone working late. My heart was no longer racing. It had turned into a cold stone in my chest. We stepped out of the car. The air was damp, smelling of rain and industrial ink. As we approached the door, I saw her. She was sitting at a large desk covered in monitors, her red hair tied back in a messy knot. She was leaning forward, her face illuminated by the pale light of a screen. She looked ordinary. She didn't look like a villain from a movie. She looked like someone's sister, someone's colleague. And that made it even more terrifying. Alex pushed the door open. A bell chimed, a cheerful sound that felt completely out of place. The girl looked up, and for a split second, she didn't recognize me. Then, her eyes shifted to mine, and I watched the blood drain from her face until she was as white as the paper coming out of the machines. Alina, I said. My voice was low, but it cut through the hum of the printers like a knife. She didn't move. She didn't even try to fake a greeting. She just stared, her hands trembling as she tried to subtly close a window on her computer. I know, I said, walking toward her desk. I know about the link. I know about the photos. And I know about the mountains. Alex stepped forward, flashing his official ID from the Ministry of Internal Affairs, a move he usually reserved for serious trouble. We've traced the IP. Alina, we have the metadata. Creating a fake identity to harass and cause emotional distress. In some circles, that's called a crime. In others, it's just pathetic. Which one is it today? Alina sank back into her chair. The silence stretched, filled only by the mechanical clicking of a nearby printer. Finally, she let out a long, shaky breath that sounded like a sob. It wasn't supposed to go this far, she whispered. Her voice was thin and reedy. I just wanted you to see. I wanted you to doubt him. Doubt him. I slammed my hand on the desk, the sound echoing through the warehouse. You tried to destroy my life. You hired a man to stalk me. Why? I don't even know you. But I know him. She suddenly screamed, her eyes snapping to mine, filled with a terrifying, desperate fire. I've known Vladimir since we were 5 years old. I was the one who helped him with his homework. I was the one who stayed by his side when his dog died. I moved schools just to be in his class. I've been waiting for him to notice me for 20 years. I stared at her, horrified. This wasn't about a brief affair or a simple grudge. This was a lifelong obsession, a slow-burning madness that had finally boiled over. He never saw me, she continued, her voice dropping to a hollow whisper. I'd wait for him to break up with his girlfriends, hoping my turn would finally come. And then you appeared. And he didn't just date you. He looked at you the way I wanted him to look at me. When I heard about the wedding, something inside me just snapped. I thought, if I could just show you he was a liar even if he wasn't, you'd leave. And then I'd be there to pick up the pieces. He'd finally realize I was the only one who truly stayed. You're sick, I said, a wave of pity washing over the anger. You really thought he would love you after you destroyed his happiness. You thought a relationship built on a lie could ever be real. Alina looked down at her keyboard. I thought I could make him see. I'm a designer. I know how to make people believe what they see on a screen. I spent weeks matching the lighting, finding the right angles from his old social media posts. I just forgot about the bruise. That stupid, tiny bruise. That stupid bruise saved my life, I said. And it saved his. Alex has enough evidence to make sure you never get near a computer or Vladimir again. Alex stepped in, his tone professional but firm. We're not filing charges today, Elena. Not if you delete everything. Every file, every backup, every fake account. And if you ever even look in our direction again, I'll make sure this design work of yours follows you to a prison cell. Do you understand? She nodded frantically, tears streaming down her face. She looked small now, broken by the weight of her own delusions. We walked out into the cool night air. The city was quiet. I felt like I had aged 10 years in a single afternoon, but the weight that had been crushing my chest was gone. I looked at Alex. How am I supposed to tell him? I asked. You don't have to tell him everything tonight, Alex said, putting a hand on my shoulder. Go home, get some sleep. Tomorrow is your wedding. You won, Tanya. You fought for the truth. And you won. When I got home, Vladimir was there. He was sitting on the couch, looking exhausted from his trip, his face still marked by that beautiful, clumsy bruise. When he saw me, he stood up, his face lighting up with that smile, the real one, the one no software could ever truly replicate. Hey, beautiful, he said, pulling me into his arms. I missed you so much. Is everything ready for tomorrow? I buried my face in his chest, breathing in the scent of his cologne and the warmth of his skin. I didn't tell him about the note, or the printing shop, or the girl who had spent 20 years in the dark. Not yet. Yes, I whispered, holding him tighter than I ever had. Everything is exactly where it's supposed to be. Tomorrow, I would walk down the aisle. Not as a naive girl, but as a woman who knew exactly what her love was worth. And as for the bouquet, I already knew exactly which direction I was going to throw it. The sun rose on my wedding day with a clarity that felt almost intentional. I woke up at 6 a.m., watching the light crawl across the ceiling of our bedroom. Beside me, Vladimir was still sleeping, his breathing deep and steady. I looked at the faint, yellowish mark of the bruise under his eye and felt a surge of protectiveness so fierce it brought tears to my eyes. Yesterday, I was ready to destroy everything we had built. Today, I felt like I was standing guard over a sanctuary. By 8 a.m., my apartment was a whirlwind of activity. The scent of hairspray and expensive perfume replaced the lingering smell of anxiety from the night before. My bridesmaids were buzzing around, sipping champagne and laughing, oblivious to the war one had fought in the shadows just hours ago. My makeup artist, a woman with steady hands and a calm soul, looked at my face and paused. You look different today, Tanya, she said, blending the foundation. Most brides are nervous, but you look like you've already won a battle. I have, I whispered, caught in my own reflection. I really have. I had decided not to tell Vladimir about Elena until after the honeymoon. I didn't want the ghost of her obsession to stand between us at the altar. I wanted our vows to be about us, not about the malice of a third party. I had messaged Alex earlier, and he confirmed that Elena had wiped every trace of her digital sabotage. She had vanished from the internet, retreating back into the obscurity where she belonged. The moment arrived. The doors of the hall swung open, and the music, a soft, orchestral swell, filled the room. I took my father's arm, my hand trembling slightly against his sleeve. But as I started walking down the aisle, the sea of faces blurred. I only saw him. Vladimir was standing at the end of the aisle, looking sharper than I'd ever seen him in a charcoal suit. And there it was, the bruise. It was barely visible under the professional touch of the stylist, but I knew it was there. To everyone else, it was a minor imperfection. To me, it was a badge of honor, a symbol of the reality that had saved us from a lie when our eyes met. I saw a flicker of concern in his expression, as if he could sense the depth of the storm I'd just passed through. But then, he smiled, that honest, crooked smile, and the last of my doubts evaporated. The ceremony was a blur of beautiful words and shared promises. But when it was time for the vows, I didn't just read the script we'd written months ago. I looked him straight in the eyes and said, Vladimir, I promise to trust you even when the world tries to give me reasons not to. I promise to look for the truth in your heart, not just in what I see on the screen or hear from a stranger. I choose you, today and every day, because I know that what we have is real and the truth is the only thing that can't be faked. I saw Alex in the second row. He gave me a small, solemn nod. He knew exactly what those words meant. The reception was a jubilant explosion of energy. There was dancing, toast that made us cry, and food that lived up to the months of planning. But the highlight came during the bouquet toss. Usually, it's a chaotic scramble of laughing women, but I had a specific destination in mind. I gathered all the single women on the dance floor. I turned my back, feeling the weight of the white roses in my hands. I caught Alex's eye in the crowd. He was standing next to Natalia, looking more nervous than I'd ever seen him. He had told me yesterday he wanted to propose, but he didn't want to overshadow our day. Double quotes 1.2. 3. I didn't just toss the bouquet. I aimed it. It soared over the heads of the crowd and landed perfectly, almost as if guided by fate, right into Natalia's startled arms. The room erupted in cheers. Alex didn't waste a second. He dropped to one knee right there on the dance floor, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. As the crowd went wild for them, Vladimir leaned into my ear. His arm wrapped tightly around my waist. You did that on purpose, didn't you? He teased, his breath warm against my skin. Maybe, I smiled, leaning my head on his shoulder. Alex saved my life yesterday. Bova, in more ways than you know. He deserves his own happy ending. Vladimir pulled back slightly, his expression turning serious. Tanya, I felt like something happened yesterday. When I came home, you held me like you were afraid I was a ghost. Is there something you're not telling me? I looked at him, my husband. My partner, the man who had been in a boring business meeting in Kyiv, while a digital version of him was vacationing in the mountains. I realized then that our marriage shouldn't start with a secret, even a protective one. I'll tell you everything, I said, taking his hand. But not tonight. Tonight, we're not thinking about the past or the people who tried to steal our joy. Tonight is just ours. We've already won, Vladimir. The rest is just noise. We spent the rest of the night dancing under a canopy of fairy lights. The world outside the fakes, the obsessed neighbors, the green ink notes felt like a distant, fading dream. I realized that the trap Elena had set hadn't weakened our bond. It had tempered it, like steel in a forged odd. As the last song played, and we prepared to leave for a honeymoon, I looked back at the empty hall. The white lace, the champagne, the flowers, they were all beautiful. But the real gift wasn't the wedding. It was the clarity that came from the fire. I was Tanya, I was a wife. And I was finally, truly, free.